Hello everyone and welcome back to Football Manager 2019 and a brand new look at some of the best Wonderkids in the new game. Now I am at the Sports Interactive offices today. They've invited us down, so if you hear any background noise, that is other content creators looking at the new game before it's released. This is the alpha version of the game before the beta comes out, so I thought this would be a great chance to have a look at who some of the best players in the game are. Now before we get into this video, please do hit that subscribe button. It really does help the channel grow. There'll be loads more content like this coming out, especially when the beta is released. So hit that subscribe button, make sure you're getting that daily content, and check out the LA Galaxy series if you haven't already. Now this is not a traditional, here are the top 10 players in the game, because that would just give you the standard Wonderkids everybody knows about. What this is looking at affordable players who are almost guaranteed to make you a profit. And the way that I've worked that out is by looking at their past 5 years, taking them to the age 22, looking at how much they're worth after 5 years and at what point they were bought and how much they were bought for, which means that for every single one of these players you're going to get a profit of between about 10 million and 40-50 million. So this is guaranteed money for you. If you're one of those players who likes to bring in young players, develop them and sell them on later, this is hugely beneficial. Or if you just want some brilliant Wonderkids in your team that you can actually afford and not pay 60 million for, then this is also very good for you. So we're going to go through the top 8. There are some restrictions on what I can show you in the game, so I can't go forward 5 years in time and show you the end point because there are certain things I just can't have on the screen. So instead, I've gone ahead, noted down some information. I'll talk to you while looking at their stats as they are now. I've also looked at their potential ability and things like that. So that we have an idea of how much they need to grow to get to where they need to be. So let's start with number 8, who is Jean-Manuel Mbom. He currently plays for Werder Bremen. You can see his stats here, technical, mental, physical, they're all here. Now he actually has a decent amount of potential growth. He doesn't become one of the best players in the world. That's not the kind of investment we're looking at here. Instead, Mbom is a player that was signed for just £11 million in the year 22-23. And he was worth 27 million shortly after that transfer. So he was one of those players that is probably just going to stay on your books. You send him out on loan, he plays a few games. Maybe if he did get a bit more first team appearances, then he would go for a little bit more money. But he is guaranteed £16 million profit off that transfer. Now, you have to remember that transfer took place 5 years after the game started. So depending on how much he develops, how much he plays for Werder Bremen, he may or may not reach that total value. So this one's a bit of a punt, but I haven't tried to sign him myself at the start because I've got limited time, but definitely put an early transfer bid in and see if you can get him, because his current ability is actually not that high, and you can see from his stats here, he's only 18, he's got decent stats, but he's got a lot of room to grow, so he's definitely a player worth taking a look at. Now if we go to number 7, this is Joe Vilage. Now Red Star are definitely a team that I always look at the start of every Football Manager because they are great for having really cheap players that you could pick up, and you can see he's valued at just £300,000 for an 18-year-old, and he's got 12 dribbling, 12 finishing, 12 first touch, and a lot of room to grow. Now he really can become one of the better players in the game. He's got excellent potential ability, so he is well worth picking up. And to underline that, he was actually signed in 22-23 for just 1.8 million, and I think you could probably get him for that at the start of the game. But he went on to become worth £40 million, so he is definitely a player that you can invest a couple of million in if you've got the budget, especially if you're the likes of a championship team and he's happy to come to you. He will be able to play in your first team, get a lot of good games in, develop really quickly and become well worth the investment. So he is definitely one of my top tips to sign. Even if you're not planning to play him, send him out on loan, rack up those appearances on loan, and he will become worth an awful lot of money. Now if we move on to number 6, I think this is Sonia Marian. Again, another of those Eastern European teams, Dinamo this time. Sonia Marian, a left winger this time, and he is fantastic value. He's valued at 195k. He's 17 years old, and he actually moved for £9 million in 22-23. So he took a little while to leave Dinamo, but I think that's because most big teams did not pick him up. And you have to remember, with some of these Eastern European teams, it does depend on what leagues you have loaded as to whether they're actually going to be available in your game, how big the data file is. So some of these players might not be on the radar of your game if you haven't got a big player scope. But he does have incredible potential ability. He really can develop into a top-class player, and he was actually worth £40 million. So given he's worth 195k at the moment, turning into a £40 million player is quite the return on your investment. Now, number 5 is a name familiar to people, especially those that play FIFA. It is Matthias de Ligt, and he is currently already worth 7.25 million, and he pays for a big team, so he is one that is hard to obtain. But to show that it can be done, he was actually signed for £26 million in 1920 by Borussia Dortmund. So if you're another big club, you can pull him away, you can poach him. They paid 26 million for him. By 2022, he was worth 56 million pounds. They turned a 30 million pound profit on him in just 3 years. And when I looked at his reports, he had over 7.2 every single season. He was absolutely incredible for Borussia Dortmund, and definitely the best defender in the game at that time. If you're at one of the big clubs in Europe, then you can pick him up. It's worth the money because you'll get a great centre-back that you can play straight out the park. But also, he will be worth so much more in the future, which you can then invest in even more Regens and Wonderkids. So into the top 3, and number 3 is Earling Harland. He is the new Odegaard. That is what I'm saying. He plays for Molde. He's got a value of 1.8 million. He's 17 years old. He plays up front but can play anywhere across attacking midfield. He's got brilliant stats, as you can see. Now, he was signed for just £3.6 million in 18-19, the very first transfer window. He went on to become worth £57 million. That's a £50 million profit that was turned on him. A huge return on investment there in 5 years. That's 10 million a year that they pulled out of him, and he was also getting incredible stats, well worth the valuation placed on him. So he was definitely an absolutely brilliant investment. I've also realised this is number 4, not number 3. I cannot count. But he is a great player to pick up, and he has a huge scope for growth as well. So he won't go straight into your first team. He will need to be nurtured. Use your mentors, develop him up, and then get him into the first team in your second or third season, and he will become a great striker. But he's a good third choice striker if you're playing one up front, or fourth or fifth choice striker if you play 2 up front. Get him in your team, fill him in your squad, and then play him up. And I would not recommend sending him out on loan, because he will not play wherever he goes on loan. You need to do this yourself in your own club, but the return is very much worth it. Now we are into number 3, and it is Sandro Tonali. He plays for Brescia. He is one of my favourite picks, and definitely one I'm telling you to keep an eye on, because he was signed on a free transfer. He was picked up just 2 years into the game on a free transfer, and he's now worth £57 million. So tap him up right at the start of the game. Show your interest in him. Start to woo him a little bit, and within a few years' time, you will be able to sign Sandro Tonali and get the total value of 57 million out of him. And just if you sign 2 of these players here that I've talked about, like if you signed Harland and Tonali, you're returning £100 million in 5 years. Think of how many Wonderkids and Regens you can buy with that. But Tonali, again, is a player that might not get into your first team straight off the bat. You're going to want to rotate him in your squad. You're going to want to develop him yourself and not send him out on loan. He is one that is going to need intensive care to get him to that valuation. But if you do it properly and you're a mid-table team, you can afford to do that, because he's not worth that much money. You can get him free, and he is a good rotation player for a mid-table club. So sign him up, get him playing, get that money. Right, second place, we have Joe Felix. Of course, Benfica, famous for being rated for top quality Wonderkids, and we're doing it again this year. We're getting Joe Felix. He's currently valued at 1.2 million. But he was signed in 1920 season for £27.5 million by quite a big club. Oh, sorry, no, he was signed for £46.5 million in 21-22 by quite a big club. But if you go in at this valuation of 1.2 million, I reckon you could get him for 10, 11 million pounds. I don't think he's going to be that high up, but you could see his stats are incredible, and he has, I think, the best potential of any of the players on this list. He really does become one of the top 5 elite players in the game. When I've run this forward, he is out of this world. So if you could pick him up, put the investment in, you'll definitely get your money back. He was worth £62 million at the time that I looked, and bearing in mind that he just made a transfer, I think that value is going to keep on going up. So definitely get in there early on Chou Felix. Now finally, we have our number one tip for Wonderkids, and it is Fiat Arp. He plays for Hamburger SV, he's 18 years old. He's got 16 finishing at 18 years old. He is sensational. Definitely getting on Fiat Arp. He was signed for 27.5 million in 1920. He has got, again, much like Joe Felix, the ability to become one of the best players in the game. So definitely pick up Fiat Arp. 27.5 million he was signed for, and he was worth 63 million pounds in the 2022 season. Definitely a brilliant return on investment. That's doubling your money even if you put 27.5 million in. But if you went after him now, I think you could get him a lot cheaper. So definitely go in and take a look at these players. He's got brilliant potential for growth. With 16 finishing, he can come off the bench and do a job. There is no doubt about that. You can get him into your club, backup striker, get him a few goals, get him some minutes on the pitch, and you'll have a huge return on your investment. Now, just having a look at the list that I've given you here, if you signed all of these players at the value that they were picked up by the clubs in the game, I reckon you're clearing £200-300 million on just 8 players alone. That's an incredible return that you've just picked up, and it's definitely worth putting the money in at the start of your game. Get these players in. You'll get great players in your team if you want to hang on to them, or you can shift them on for a profit and keep reinvesting that money. But definitely make a move for these players. And these are players that are brand new. Not all of these were Wonderkids before in previous games. A couple of them, like Chou Felix and Delete, were around for the last few years, but the rest of them are brand new. Nobody knows about these. So get in there now, start picking them up, and you'll have a brilliant team in just a few years' time. But that is going to be it for today's episode. Do drop a like on the video if you enjoyed this Wonderkids overview. Let me know if you want more videos like this in the comment section, and I could definitely look for 8 more for you if that would be helpful. And obviously when I'm not restricted on what I can show you, then there will be more and more Wonderkids available I can pick up as well. So do let me know if you'd like to see that, and please hit that subscribe button. Only 16% of people are subscribed to the channel. Let's get that up. I'd love to hit 20k by the end of the year. But until next time, see ya.